Hope is a cricket's whistle at night. Sing along as you walk on by, don't fright. The chipping sound is the assurance of life. Temba expects from what he's accountable for. If he displayed ill behavior, he has shots that help me never find his way. And if he displayed gratitude, fairly treated others as much as he expected to be treated, he would live in solitude amongst the rest. And how will he know that he's making a positive contribution in a manipulative society? By expressions his fellow athletes project through every chance they get to meet him. The community is glad to have met a man of this caliber. Xolani, named after fault though born of innocence. He is bubbly with zeal which is resembled by his chubbiness. He carries his name with wrath, causing menace to society that is scorned by his appearance. There is no way you cannot notice his presence, yet he is not fully aware of how bold is his existence. Temba is not a good fisherman, but his willingness to try makes him go to bed having had something to eat for the day. It is not hunger that leads him to the lake in search for food, although it may be fish paste, fish soup, curry fish, and anything edible prepared of the mama. He has an overwhelming excitement for his taste buds that sharing fits him fully. Xolani's anger threatened even the meek creatures that will give themselves up willingly, as if they knew that their lives are supposed to end at an intestine cemetery. The fish of all the river streams on the land will sense Xolani's emotions from afar, that the fish would escape towards a deeper side of the lake, fearing that they would be devoured out of anger, which meant their sacrifice was supposed to be harsher. Well, I guess fish cooks out well when it's being prepared in calmness. Some fishermen will try to convince Xolani. Animals are very submissive to kindness. Xolani, having moved from almost all sides of the lake where he chose to fish, he noticed no fish on sight, but witnessed the other fishermen celebrate their catch from the other side of the lake. Instead of becoming happy for his fellow fishermen, remaining optimistic and applying a little patience after the 16th try, he reacted out of jealousy and anger. With his strength, he shook the fishermen off their canoes and took fish they had caught all to himself, piled up numerous nets, and went to sell it for profit. Xolani's anger made him forget to enjoy fruits of labor, that he couldn't even prepare himself at least raw fish in his quick moves. I think no one teaches gifting as gardening does, Temba claimed to himself. His curiosity earned him lessons that are not beyond reach, which he gladly grasped with both of his hands. See, for Temba, planting was like leaving footprints on sands that will help him trace his way back from a route of hunger he once experienced. He learned his old folks' way. His ancestors were glad that Temba's curiosity led him towards their direction, so they met him halfway by leaving behind traces of partition land which they highly recommended for vegetation, gardening commandments, recipes, preserved seeds for exotic vegetation, medical herbs for healing the sick, and the traditional healer's directory around the land. Temba will spend all day tilting the ground, preparing the soil to be durable for planting as he were told by the gardening gurus. And because he was excited by the greenery of sprouting seeds, he would go ahead and explore areas he and most men had never went before. That way, He learned his surroundings as if he was an eagle floating on the highest level of the sky, navigating the whole ground scenario for livelihood. Anything green, he makes it his laboratory. Fellow farmers made remarks about him. The soil is his kitchen. Without giving his food a thought of their nutritional benefits, no paying no mind to what, who, how food is there. Xolani definitely acknowledges the fact why he has to eat. I am so hungry. I could eat anything that looks delicious. Xolani thought out loud to himself that those who are near him heard this, knowing that he is capable of doing so at the cost of somebody's effort. Why don't you try growing your own food instead? The farmers attempted to convince Xolani. Xolani was triggered to plant corn for the first time in his life. Even so, he only did so with intentions to spite those who say, if a number of scars on your hands was a man's one-way ticket to paradise, Xolani would be rejected. And if you were to ask why they say so about Xolani's judgment based on the scenario, they'd respond and say, Xolani never labored. He doesn't even know the pain of the smallest cut the walking tool can cause. The farmers were not afraid of Xolani. They tolerated him and his manners for one reason, that Xolani will waken in his lineage, which must be something of great worth. Xolani, wanting to prove a point, snatched the grain from Temba's palm and scattered the seeds without following proper procedures to assure his time isn't risked for waste, which would consequent to loss and starvation. He now applied the parts into his garden for order and neatness. It was as if he was feeding chickens, and surely birds were thankful for the treat. Some of the seeds were thrown on fertile ground, but were never devoured by hungry bird that flies, nor even a starving bug that walks. And most of his stolen seeds never sprouted, for seeds planted in anger burst just there. Fortunately, the ground Xolani threw seeds at was made with good intentions, by hands of the healer in the village held as the Sanusi of the eroding soil. He simply mixed toxicated soil with fertile soil and influenced the community to dump their leftover foods from the feast, especially organized to celebrate the jointed sent by the garden. But they had to make sure they do so with a sprinkle of prayer. Heal our ground. So it was so. Each bed was prayed for. Regardless of the fact that Xolani's laziness to water the garden was rescued by a rainy season, this made him seem witty. And weeds on his garden didn't bother him until it was time to harvest. The crop grew taller as it should, but what seemed to be corn was just multiple layers of leaves, which was shaped like a full-grown grape corn. They bed no corn, and this frustrated Xolani. So on the day before the farmers intended to harvest, Xolani went out at night to steal all the corn, poured oil on the remains, and burned the field in attempt to hide evidence that would link to him. Xolani sold the loot the following morning to another ethnic race for profit as he succumbed to guilt. The village was blanketed by smoke. Ashes of burnt grass snowed upon nostrils of snoozing neighborhood watchmen. And just like grandma's nose stuffed with tobacco, they grabbed hold of their handkerchief to accompany their sneeze upon a realization. And this was followed by a corkscrew, which was triggered by excessive smoke inhalation as its companions choked. Well, that cannot be the first crow of the morning. Temba rose up straight from the reed mat he was sleeping on to listen attentively. And it doesn't smell like my wife preparing cornflakes for breakfast either. Temba quickly stood up to dress as he ran to witness his senses. Effort is evidence of hope which stood as a higher stature inside of those who slumber their working days. The farmers couldn't assume it as a natural cause of fire. They believed that someone tampered with their trust, for they have discovered traces of oil alongside their vegetation poles. There was nothing to do to try to stop the fire. The farmers only stood to watch the flames feed the open air with the crumbs that was left. The farmers felt the need to hold someone responsible, for this was not carelessness that caused it. With the villagers clouded by a mood of contempt, the community recalled its very own backbone they relied on, their will to cope with whatever mistress their survival means. In many cases, where council gathered for crucial decision making, the community will agree and disagree even upon small things. Whatever leads them to quarrel, it is only done to find common ground. They only fought to protect righthood, and undoubtedly, regardless of how lengthy the arguments may turn out to be, at the end of it all, both parties will be satisfied. Unlike any other village, this was celebrated with a feast at the wrestling match for a cowskin. At every section of location Xolani was at, people seemed to be not pleased with him, and they were not even hiding it. Xolani would spend so much time alone, even in the midst of a number of people drawing water from the same riverbank he drank from. He'd speak boldly, make noise, and fuss about nothingness. People would not notice him even in full sight of his presence. Somehow the community accepted that this is how it should be, that every village must have its manners, otherwise life would be a bore without annoyance. The farmers spoke amongst themselves about Xolani, saying that even on the harvest seasons, spoils shouldn't be a thing to react to with shock amongst crops that grew well. The farmers should expect a little loss, and Xolani was just what has to be fed to the donkeys and the pigs. They joked with concern, spoiling mood, for this was the loss of a rare breed. Anger overrode sympathy to save themselves from evil contempt before it became part of their lives. They could only remedy their conditions by distancing themselves from Xolani and making opposite turns from him. They wouldn't entice him to look their way and try to engage with them. They would even supply his greed instead of awaiting to see who is next to be Xolani's victim. The villagers would rather not expose themselves to danger. Xolani was danger to himself. He fed from fear. However, the community was not afraid of him. Instead, they was just tolerant of him. He quenched his thirst with tears of those who wept from his wrath of injustices. The farmers invited him to his loot after they had stored quantity of stock they needed away, which was of good quality. The workers moved ahead of Xolani's plans, and Xolani never tasted the good feed since. Xolani was conflicted, for he was not receiving an approval for his behavior. For the first time he asked himself, what is it that I am doing wrong that has begotten me these kind of reactions from what I like to trouble? Death is his token of appreciation, which he tipped off freely from his treasure box of threats. It was a wasteful expenditure because it benefited no one. It was on this day that he learned that his way of life truly lacked ambition.